You been living in this chicken coop?
Travis said the house was being repaired.
I sent money every single month, Ryan.
I thought you forgot us.
Where is the money I sent our parents? You left. I handled everything here. You stole from Mom and Dad. Prove it. Travis hid every letter you sent us. You thought I abandoned you? For 6 years. Then today, we take our family back.
The chicken coop was still standing. Ryan Calloway saw it from the driveway, weathered wood, rusted latch, the same coop that had held 30 hens the summer he left for California. He had sent home enough money to rebuild this farm twice over, and the chicken coop was still standing, while the main house looked like it was holding itself up through sheer stubbornness. He stepped out of the rental car and stood very still because something about the scene in front of him told him that the last 6 years had gone very wrong, and no amount of money was going to explain why. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 6 years ago, Ryan Calloway had left Harlan County with 2 bags and a plane ticket, and a promise to himself that he would take care of his family from a distance. The drive from the county airport had taken 40 minutes on roads that seemed to have gotten quieter since he last drove them. Ryan had kept the window down even though the August air was thick. He wanted to smell the place, the pine and red clay and cut grass before he had to face what it looked like. He told himself the farm would probably need some work. Things always needed work. He had money now. That was what money was for. He had not been prepared for this. The fence line along the left side of the driveway had come down in 2 places, the posts leaning like old men who couldn't quite stand up straight. The barn roof sagged in the middle, a long, shallow dip where the rafters had given way under years of winter ice. The yard was overgrown past the first 50 feet, milkweed and thistle going to seed along the edges of the gravel lane. And the house itself, paint peeling from the clapboard siding in long, curling strips. The porch railing missing 2 balusters aboard across the front steps that had clearly been cracked through and never replaced. Ryan stood beside the rental car with his hand still on the door handle. He was 42 years old. He had sold his second software company for $11 million 14 months ago. He had lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Pacific Heights with a view of the bay. And the home where he had grown up, where his parents still lived, or were supposed to live, looked like it had been abandoned. He heard the screen door before he saw his father. The spring on it still had that particular squeal, a sound so specific to this place that it hit Ryan somewhere behind the sternum. Earl Calloway came out onto the porch slowly, one hand on the doorframe, and Ryan could see immediately that 6 years had cost him weight and pace. His father had always been a big man, wide through the shoulders, deliberate in every movement. The man on the porch was thinner, his flannel shirt loose in a way it wouldn't have been before. But he was standing. He was standing, and his eyes were clear, and when he saw Ryan, something in his face shifted. Ryan crossed the yard. He shook his father's hand first out of some old reflex, and then Earl pulled him in and held on with both arms, and Ryan felt how much smaller the embrace was than he remembered. "You made it," Earl said. "I made it, Dad." They stood there a moment. The yard was quiet except for a crow somewhere in the oaks out back. Inside, Ryan set his bag by the door and took in the living room. The furniture he recognized, the same couch, the same side table with the lamp that had a crack in the base his mother had fixed with wood glue 15 years ago. But the room felt dim and stale, like it hadn't been opened up in a while. A space heater sat in the corner even though it was August. The throw rug was fraying at one edge. "Where's Mom?" Ryan asked. Earl moved toward the kitchen. "She's resting comfortably." "Out back." Ryan followed him. "Out back where she likes the quiet out there." Earl opened the refrigerator and the shelves were sparse: a carton of milk, a few eggs, a block of butter. He closed it again. Travis brings groceries every week. When was Travis last here? Last Thursday. Ryan looked at the calendar on the wall. Today was Wednesday. He opened the pantry cabinet. 2 cans of soup, a box of crackers, a jar of peanut butter with maybe 2 servings left. Dad. He kept his voice level. Travis brings groceries every Thursday, and this is what's in the pantry. Earl didn't answer. He was looking at the window over the sink. Ryan walked to the back door and looked out. The property stretched behind the house, the old vegetable garden gone to weeds. The oak tree with the tire swing Earl had put up in 1987, the woodpile that needed splitting, and at the far edge of the yard, maybe 60 yards off the chicken coop. A faint orange glow came from the single window on its south-facing wall, a space heater glow. In August, he turned back to his father. Earl was still looking at the window jaw, set, not quite able to meet Ryan's eyes. Dad. Ryan's voice was quieter now. Where is Mom? Earl looked at him then. His eyes were wet at the corners in the way old men's eyes sometimes were when they were trying not to cry and failing at the edges. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the back of the property. Not the house. The back of the property. Ryan walked first. Earl came behind him slower, his boots scuffing the dry grass. Neither spoke. The evening light was going amber, long shadows reaching across the back lot. Ryan kept his eyes on the chicken coop as he crossed the yard. The orange glow from the window was steady, a space heater turned up running in August heat, because something inside that coop needed warming. The extension cord ran from the small outdoor outlet on the back of the house, snaking 60 yards through the grass, secured at intervals with plastic stakes, like someone had planned this out. Like it was meant to last. Ryan stopped in front of the coop door. The latch was a new one, not the old rusted hook he remembered from childhood, but a proper metal toggle bolt, easy to open from the outside, easy to open from inside. Someone had installed it recently. He could hear his mother's voice through the door. She was humming. An old hymn he couldn't place which one, but the sound of it loosened something in his chest that he hadn't known was clenched. He lifted the latch. He pushed the door open. Diane Calloway was sitting on a cot along the far wall, a wool blanket pulled across her lap, even though the space heater was running full. She had a Bible open on a small TV tray beside her, the folding kind, the same one that used to live in the living room. On the wall behind her, a board had been nailed horizontally between the studs, a shelf of sorts. On it sat a framed photograph of Ryan, his college graduation photo, the one that used to be on the fireplace mantel. The floor was packed earth. The ceiling was the underside of the coop roof, maybe 6 feet at the peak, lower at the sides. A single bare bulb hung from a cord. The whole space was perhaps 10 by 12 feet. Diane looked up. Her face changed completely when she saw him. Every line in it, and there were more than Ryan remembered, shifted upward. Her eyes lit. Her hands came up from the blanket and reached toward him. Ryan. It wasn't quite a question, and not quite an exclamation. Just his name, said the way only his mother said it. He crossed the small space and took both her hands and crouched down so he was level with her. She looked older, softer, her hair fully silver now, but her grip was still firm. Hi, Mom. Oh, you're here. She pulled his hands to her chest. You're finally here. He held on. He did not look around the coop again for a moment. He just stayed where he was, her hands in his, the heater humming the Bible open to Psalms. When he finally sat down on the edge of the cot, he made himself look at the room properly. A hook on the wall held a cardigan and a fleece jacket. A plastic storage bin under the cot, presumably clothes. The TV tray with the Bible and a glass of water and a small clock. The photograph. "Mom," he said carefully, "how long have you been sleeping out here?" She waved a hand. "Oh, just while Travis gets the bedroom sorted. The roof on that side was giving some trouble, you know. He said it would just be a few weeks." How many weeks? She thought about it. Genuinely thought, tilting her head the way she always had. "I'm not sure, really. The time gets away from me." She smiled at him. "But it doesn't matter now. You're here." Ryan swallowed. "It's all right, Mom. It really is fine out here. Quiet." She patted his hand. "And Travis put the heater in so it's warm at night?" He nodded. He looked at the photograph on the shelf, his college graduation 20 years ago. His mother had brought it out here, or someone had brought it for her. Either way, she had been living in a chicken coop for weeks or months with his photograph on a wooden shelf nailed between two studs, and she thought it was fine. He looked back at Earl, who had stayed in the doorway. Earl was looking at the ground. His jaw was working. Ryan stood. He kissed his mother's forehead. "I'm going to get some things from town, Mom. I'll be back for dinner." She beamed. "I'll put the kettle on. Stay inside, okay? I'll come get you." He walked Earl back to the house. He drove to the nearest Kroger and spent $400. He did not let himself cry in the store, but in the parking lot he sat for 2 minutes with the engine off and his hands on the wheel. When he came back, he moved Diane from the coop to the main house bedroom. Her bedroom, the master, which was perfectly fine. The sagging roof was above the guest room on the opposite side of the house. He checked both rooms himself, ran his hand along the ceiling in the guest room, and felt dampness, but the master was sound. Diane had been sleeping in a chicken coop while her own bedroom sat empty, because Travis had told her it was necessary, and she had believed him. They ate together at the kitchen table. Ryan had bought roast chicken from the deli counter and vegetables and bread and 2 kinds of fruit. Diane ate well. She talked about the garden she'd been trying to keep up, about Sandra from next door, who brought soup sometimes, about a cardinal that had been coming to the windowsill. After Diane turned in, Ryan sat with his father on the porch. The night was warm. The stars were out over the ridge. Earl said, "She's been out there 4 months, son." Ryan turned to look at him. 4 months. Travis said the contractor kept delaying. Said supplies were backed up. I told him that didn't make sense, but Earl stopped. She didn't mind it, is the thing. She said it was peaceful. Ryan looked out at the coop. The orange glow was gone now. He'd unplugged the extension cord when he moved her things inside. "Dad, Travis told me she was fine. Every time I called, he said she was fine. He said you both were fine." Earl was quiet for a long moment. "He told your mother," Earl said slowly, "that you knew, that you'd approved the arrangement, that you'd asked him to keep an eye on things and not bother you." Ryan felt the words land. He said nothing. The air between them thickened. "He said you were busy building your life." Earl's voice was careful, neutral, like he was trying not to place blame anywhere yet. "He said you'd approved it." Ryan looked at his father, at the old hands folded in his lap, at the lines in his face that hadn't been there 6 years ago. "I didn't approve anything, Dad." Earl nodded very slowly. "I know that now." The porch light flickered once. In the distance, somewhere down the county road, a truck passed. Ryan sat with his hands on his knees and tried to keep his breathing steady, because there was a rage building in him that had nowhere useful to go yet. And the first thing he needed to do, the very first thing, was understand exactly how bad this was before he said Travis's name out loud again. Ryan was awake before 5. He lay on the living room couch in the dark and listened to the house, the settling of old joists, his father's slow footsteps when Earl got up at 5:30 to use the bathroom, the first birds starting up outside. He'd slept maybe 3 hours. He checked his phone in the gray early light. 11 missed calls from a San Francisco area code that he'd let go to voicemail last night. His business partner wondering why he hadn't joined the Tuesday investor call. Ryan set the phone face down. He made coffee on the stove with the old percolator his parents had used for 40 years because the coffee maker was gone or broken. He wasn't sure which. He drank it standing at the kitchen window looking at the backyard. The extension cord still lay in the grass where he'd left it. In the daylight, it looked like what it was, a 60-yard compromise someone had made when they should have fixed a roof. At 8 o'clock, he heard a knock at the back door. Sandra Lee was 52 with close-cropped silver hair and the measured movements of someone who used to work in a school clinic, and still moved like she was assessing whether someone needed sitting down. She carried a foil-covered dish, a casserole from the smell of it. "I saw the rental car," she said. "I figured you'd made it." "You know who I am." Ryan held the door open. "I've seen your photo." She nodded toward the living room, toward some version of his face, presumably visible from the hall. "I'm Sandra Lee. I'm next door. I've been coming a couple of times a week to check on your folks." "How long?" "About 14 months. She set the dish on the counter and turned to face him. She had a way of looking at people directly without hurry. "Your father won't ask for help. Your mother, she's been having some days that are harder than others, memory-wise. On the hard days, she sometimes forgets she already ate." A pause. "So I come." Ryan looked at the casserole dish. 14 months of twice-weekly visits from a neighbor because his parents couldn't reliably feed themselves, and nobody with authority over their finances was buying groceries. $4,000 a month, and a neighbor was keeping them fed with casseroles. "Thank you," he said. He meant it in a way that was too large for the words. Sandra studied him for a moment. "Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to show you something. Come over to my house when you can." He checked on Diane, still sleeping, which the doctor might call late sleeping, but Ryan recognized as the kind of sleep that came from finally feeling safe, and told Earl where he was going. Earl nodded. He already knew Sandra. Her kitchen table was neat and organized in the way of someone who worked systematically. She put a mug of coffee in front of Ryan, and then pulled a manila folder from the drawer beside the refrigerator. She set it on the table between them and didn't open it yet. "I want to say something first," Sandra said. "I don't know everything that's been going on in that family. I just know what I've seen." "That's enough," Ryan said. "Show me." She opened the folder. The first page was a photograph dated and printed in the corner, the way a phone sends them when you airdrop to a computer. The date was 19 months ago. It showed the side of Ryan's parents' house, the exterior wall where the guest room window was, with a dark water stain spreading from the eave down to the foundation. Significant water damage. Not new. "I started documenting when I realized it wasn't getting better," Sandra said. "I thought if I ever needed to talk to someone official, I should have dates." She turned the pages. Photos of the barn, the fence, the gutters pulling away from the fascia. Then a handwritten note on lined paper in a slightly uneven hand, the handwriting of someone whose fine motor control was beginning to slip. Ryan read it. "Sandra, please tell Ryan I miss him. I can't reach him anymore. The number Travis gave me goes to a recording that says to leave a message. I have left messages. He doesn't call back. Please tell him. Diane." Ryan set the note down very carefully. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. "She wrote that 8 months ago," Sandra said. "She was having a clear day. She pressed it into my hand when I was leaving." Ryan picked up the note again. His mother's handwriting. I can't reach him anymore. I tried calling myself Sandra, continued. I used the number Earl had written down for you. The one on the kitchen wall. Ryan looked up. There's a number on the kitchen wall. There is. I called it twice. A man answered. She paused. Not you. What did he say? He said you were not available and to leave a message. I left my name and number. No one called me back. Ryan was quiet for a moment. He thought about the calls he'd made to his parents' landline over the past few years, calls that went through without question calls, where Travis answered and said Diane was resting, or Earl was in the barn, calls, where Ryan accepted the summary and hung up because he was busy and Travis had always managed things. The number on the wall, Ryan said. Is it my number? I don't know. I don't know what your number is. I have a San Francisco number. 415. Sandra shook her head. The one on the wall starts with 606. 606 was Eastern Kentucky. Travis's area code. Ryan sat back in his chair. He felt the shape of it beginning to assemble, not just the stolen money, not just the neglect, but something more deliberate. A structure someone had built. Sandra slid the last item in the folder across the table. It was a printed page, a bank withdrawal slip photocopied. The name on it was Travis Calloway. The amount was $4,000. The date was 1 month after Ryan had set up the first wire transfer. My son works at the county credit union, Sandra said. He can't share official records, but he came to me privately about 6 months ago. He said he'd seen things that worried him and he didn't know who to talk to. That's all I can say about how I got this. Ryan looked at the withdrawal slip. $4,000. Travis Calloway. He picked up the folder. He asked Sandra if he could borrow it. She shook her head. She wanted to keep the originals. But she let him photograph every page. Back at the farm, he drove 10 minutes to the gas station with the copy machine. He printed everything from his phone. He put the copies in a manila envelope he bought from the small display rack by the register. Then he sat in the rental car in the parking lot and opened the joint account he had set up 8 years ago. His name was still on it. He had checked this from California before coming home just in case. And he pulled up 6 years of transactions. He scrolled through them in the afternoon heat with the engine idling. The numbers were clean and simple and completely damning. $4,000 in almost exactly every month. Withdrawals in Travis's name, sometimes the same day, sometimes within the week, averaging $3,850 per month. What remained $150 a month, sometimes less, appeared to be what actually reached his parents' household. Ryan did the math on a receipt from the gas station pencil stub from the glove compartment. 72 months. $4,000 a month. $288,000 total. What Travis had spent on Earl and Diane, based on what Ryan could see in the account, less than $15,000 over 6 years. He wrote the number down. He underlined it twice. Then he called Travis. Hey. Travis's voice was easy, warm. I heard you made it in. Was going to call you. I'm sure you were, Ryan said. Travis, I moved Mom back into the house. A pause. Small, controlled. Oh. Yeah, I was going to get to that. The contractor. She's been in the chicken coop for 4 months. Ryan, that's not really 4 months. Ryan kept his voice flat. I'd like to talk. Can you come by tomorrow morning? Sure, of course. Absolutely. The warmth was still there, but it had shifted, slightly recalibrated. We can sort everything out. Yeah, Ryan said. We'll sort it out. He hung up. He sat with the envelope in his lap and the number he'd underlined on the gas station receipt and the photograph of his mother's handwritten note in his phone. He drove back to the farm and cooked dinner. He didn't say anything at the table about what he'd found. Diane asked if he'd had a nice drive. He said yes. Earl ate quietly. After they turned in, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with the account records printed out in front of him. He got out a yellow legal pad and started making a list. Every withdrawal, every date. 6 years of someone else's choices documented in 3-digit and 4-digit increments, adding up to something that made the anger in him very quiet and very cold. Travis arrived at 9 the next morning. Ryan watched from the kitchen window as the black pickup came down the lane, clean truck, new tires, the kind of vehicle that cost $30,000 but got described as a work truck. Travis stepped out in new boots and a pressed flannel shirt and walked toward the house with the ease of someone who had prepared his talking points. Ryan met him on the porch. The brothers had not seen each other in 3 years. Travis was 38, broader than Ryan remembered, with the outdoor tan of someone who worked construction jobs when he chose to, and declined them when he didn't. He had Earl's build, but none of Earl's substance. He smiled when he saw Ryan, a good smile practiced. "Good to see you, brother." He stepped forward for a handshake that became a brief shoulder clasp. "Mom was asking about you last night. She's in a good mood today." "She's always in a good mood," Ryan said. "That's not the issue." Travis's smile stayed where it was. "Come on, Ryan. Let's not start like this. Walk with me." They went around to the side of the house, away from the kitchen window. Ryan stopped where the yard met the gravel path. Travis stood with his thumbs in his pockets. "Mom was in the chicken coop for 4 months," Ryan said. "I explained that. You told her the roof on her bedroom was the problem. I checked both rooms. The moisture damage is above the guest room. Her bedroom is dry. She didn't need to be out there for a single night, Travis. Not one." Travis shifted his weight. The contractor was going to do both sides. It made sense to what contractor A pause. "Buddy Hale, local guy. I'll need his contact information. I don't have it on me." Ryan looked at him steadily. "The account. Walk me through it." "What account?" "The joint account. The one I've been depositing into since I left. $4,000 a month, 72 months. Travis's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in the ease. "I kept records. I'd like to see them. I'll email them to you." "Today?" "Sure. Today." Travis looked toward the barn. "Look, I know this looks bad. It doesn't look like anything yet," Ryan said. "I'm asking questions. Tell me what the money went to." Travis ran a hand across the back of his neck. "Groceries, utilities." "The plumber came out twice. There was that septic issue. Tax payment on the property last year. Medical co-pays, you know Dad has his heart thing." He ticked the items off with practiced confidence. "It adds up, Ryan. Running a property this size isn't cheap. The pantry had 2 cans of soup and a box of crackers. I brought groceries last Thursday. 1 week's worth, for 2 people who can barely drive." Travis met his eyes. "I was here. You weren't. I'm not going to apologize for that." There it was. Ryan had expected it, the pivot to absence, the oldest move available. Ryan had left Travis, had stayed, therefore Travis's version of events was the one that mattered. It was a reasonable argument if none of the other facts existed. Ryan said, "Is Mom seeing a specialist?" For her memory, Travis didn't answer immediately. "You mentioned a neurologist yesterday," Ryan said. "When I called you from Sandra's." Another pause, shorter this time. Travis recalibrated. "Yeah. She's seen someone. Over in Hazard. I handled the appointments." "I didn't know she had appointments. I didn't know she'd been evaluated." "You live in California, Ryan. You're not exactly on call. I would have wanted to know." Ryan kept his voice level. "What's the diagnosis?" Travis waved a hand vaguely. Early stage. They said to monitor it. Nothing urgent. I want to see the records. I'll have to find them. Today, if you can. Travis looked at him for a moment, a longer look than the conversation strictly required. Something was running behind his eyes. A calculation. I'll get you everything, Travis said. I want to be transparent here, Ryan. We're family. Great, Ryan said. I'll be here. Travis left shortly after. Ryan watched the truck go back up the lane and then stood in the yard until the sound of the engine faded. He went back inside. He found Earl in the living room with the newspaper he never managed to read past the front page anymore. Ryan sat across from him. Travis came. Earl nodded. I know. I heard. Did Travis ever show you bank statements, receipts, anything about how the household money was being managed? Earl folded the newspaper carefully. No. He said he'd handle it. He said that was his contribution since you handled the money. He'd handle the logistics. Did he ever pay any bills directly from the account, show you anything? He handled it all online, said it was easier. Earl set the newspaper on the side table. I'm not good with computers. Ryan asked him to wait there. He went to the kitchen and opened his laptop. He pulled up the account again and looked at the transaction list with a different lens. Not the withdrawals this time, but the deposits. Every month, $4,000 from Ryan's bank in California. Regular as breathing. He cross-referenced what he could. The county property tax record public online showed a payment of $1,100 18 months ago. One payment in 6 years. The electric company's online portal showed a pattern of late fees going back 3 years. The landline bill, he found it tucked in the kitchen drawer. A paper bill from 15 months ago was 2 months past due. The math was getting cleaner, and it was clean in the worst possible way. He went back to Earl. He opened the account on his laptop and turned it to face the old man. Dad. Tell me what you see. Earl looked at the screen for a long time. He was not a man who spent much time with spreadsheets, but he had run a working farm for 40 years, and he understood numbers in a practical way. That's what you sent, Earl said finally. Every month, 72 months. Earl was quiet. What Travis told you he was spending on the household, Ryan said. Does any amount he mentioned match what you're seeing come out? Earl shook his head slowly. He said it cost more than you were sending. He said you were being generous, but it wasn't quite enough. He said he was making up the difference himself. A long pause. I believed him. Ryan closed the laptop. He put his hand on his father's arm for a moment, then stood. He called Marcus Webb from the front porch, low voice facing away from the windows. Marcus was 45, Nashville-based, had been Ryan's personal attorney since the first company sale. They had known each other since law school. Marcus had been a year ahead of Ryan at Vanderbilt, before going to law school while Ryan went into tech. He picked up on the second ring. Marcus, Ryan said, I need you to look at a power of attorney document, and I need to know if it can be challenged. A pause. What kind of POA broad? Covers finances, property, healthcare decisions. My father signed it. My younger brother is named as the agent. Ryan looked out at the property, the overgrown fence line, the slumping barn. Dad was on cardiac medication in a hospital room when he signed. No independent counsel, just a notary my brother brought in. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Jurisdiction, Kentucky. Harlan County. How old is your father? 72. How long ago was the signing? 26 months. Has the agent exercised the POA extensively? Ryan turned and looked at the chicken coop at the back of the property, standing in the evening light. The extension cord still curled in the grass where he'd left it yesterday. Marcus. How bad is it? Tell me everything. Ryan sat down on the porch step and told him. Marcus called back before noon with a preliminary read. The POA is challengeable, he said. Not guaranteed, but challengeable on multiple grounds. Undue influence, questionable capacity, at time of signing absence of independent legal counsel. In Kentucky, a power of attorney signed by a vulnerable adult without independent advisement can be contested in circuit court. He paused. But Ryan, you need to understand a challenge takes time. And if the agent has been exercising the POA actively, there's a window problem. What do you mean? If your brother has been making decisions under the POA, and those decisions haven't been formally contested, some of them may be harder to unwind than others. The longer the POA has been in use, the more entrenched the situation becomes. Another pause. I'd need to see the document. I'll scan it and send it tonight. Send me the bank records too. Everything you have. Ryan spent the afternoon at the kitchen table building the file. Earl gave him access to the kitchen drawer where the household papers were kept, utility bills, the property tax notice from 2 years ago, a folder labeled medical in Earl's handwriting. Ryan went through it methodically. The medical folder was thin. Earl's cardiology records were there and some blood work from 18 months ago. But there was nothing for Diane. No neurology records, no cognitive assessment, nothing to document what Travis had mentioned, the specialist in hazard, the early-stage diagnosis, the supposed monitoring plan. If Diane had a neurologist, the records weren't here. Ryan photographed everything in the drawer. Then he drove to the county library and used their scanner, 15 cents a page, to create clean digital copies of every document. He emailed the packet to Marcus at 4 p.m. and drove back. He found Earl on the porch, sitting in the old wooden rocker with a glass of iced tea looking at the barn. Ryan sat beside him in the other rocker, and they didn't speak for a while. The late afternoon was quiet. Diane was inside resting, Dad, Ryan said eventually. When you signed that document, the power of attorney, what exactly did Travis tell you? It was for Earl kept his eyes on the barn. He brought it to the hospital room. Said it was standard. Said that while I was laid up, if something needed deciding about the property, about bills, he needed to be able to act. Said you were too far and couldn't fly back every time something came up. Did he mention what the document covered? Said it was financial. For the property. It covers healthcare decisions too, Dad. Earl's hand tightened slightly on the arm of the rocker. He didn't mention that. He didn't mention it because it's a much bigger document than he described. The old man was quiet for a moment. Then I was scared. I'd had the procedure that morning. My chest hurt. The nurse said I should rest. His voice was flat, recounting facts without inflection. Travis said the notary was just down the hall. It would take 2 minutes. Ryan looked at the barn, the sagging roofline, the door hanging slightly off its upper hinge. Did anyone explain what you were signing before you signed? Travis explained it. No one else. No. Ryan nodded. He was piecing together the chronology. Travis had been positioned as the local manager for years. Ryan in California, Travis in the county. Travis, the one who drove their parents to appointments and handled contractors and wrote checks from the joint account. It was a reasonable arrangement in theory. In practice, it had given Travis complete control over everything, and Travis had used that control to construct a situation where he was indispensable. Ryan was uninformed, and their parents were entirely dependent on a man who was stealing from them. The word settled in Ryan's mind for the first time with full clarity. Stealing. Not mismanaging. Not misappropriating in some gray area way. Travis Calloway had stolen $288,000 from his elderly parents, who had a retirement income barely adequate for a paid-off property and grocery bills, and he had done it for 6 years, and in the process, he had let their home fall apart around them and put their mother in a chicken coop, and spent $2,000 out of the $288,000 to make that situation minimally survivable. Ryan went inside and checked on Diane. She was sitting in the living room with a novel open in her lap, not quite reading it. Her eyes weren't moving, but holding it with the comfort of long habit. He sat beside her for a few minutes. She asked about his apartment in California, what the view was like, whether he still liked the coffee in San Francisco better than the coffee here. He told her no contest, she made the best coffee he'd ever had. She smiled and told him he'd always been a sweet boy. After she turned in, Ryan sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop one more time. He pulled up the joint account. He had noticed something that afternoon while scrolling a transaction he'd dismissed at first. $2,000 paid to a payee listed as H. Danner Services, dated approximately 5 months ago. He searched Harlan County business registrations. No result for that name. He searched contractor licensing in Kentucky. No result. He Googled H. Danner, Harlan County. The third result was a Facebook page for a handyman called Hank Danner, Odd Jobs, Harlan and Leslie County. Rated 2.8 stars. 4 reviews, one of which said, "Would not recommend for anything structural." Ryan found the Buddy Hale that Travis had named. Buddy Hale Roofing was a legitimate business. He called the cell number on the website. Buddy answered on the 4th ring, cautious at first, then cooperative. He said he had never done any work for the Calloway property. He'd given an estimate 14 months ago for a guest room roof repair, a written estimate, but Travis had called him a week later and said they were going in a different direction. Ryan thanked him and hung up. H. Danner Services. $2,000. For a chicken coop conversion that involved a space heater, a cot, an extension cord, and a shelf nailed to the wall. He wrote it all down. He added it to the file. He emailed Marcus an updated note at 11:30 that night. One more thing. The roof contractor was dismissed. The chicken coop conversion was done by an unlicensed handyman for $2,000. I believe Travis billed this to the household account as a maintenance expense. Marcus replied in under 5 minutes. Ryan had noticed he replied fast. It suggested this was not a low priority for him. Good. Itemized fraud is easier to prosecute than bulk misappropriation. Keep everything. Ryan set down his phone and looked out the kitchen window at the backyard. The chicken coop was a dark shape against the darker tree line. The extension cord was still coiled in the grass. He thought about his mother in there month after month with his photograph on a shelf. Thinking Ryan knew. Thinking it was temporary. Humming hymns. He thought about the $2,000 that had gone to Hank Danner for odd jobs. He thought about the $288,000 that had gone somewhere else entirely. He picked up his legal pad and kept writing. Travis had said he'd email the records by end of day. The email never came. Ryan waited until 8 the next morning, then called. Travis answered quickly, too quickly, which meant he'd been watching the phone. The records, Ryan said. Yeah, I'm pulling them together. It's a lot of paperwork. How much paperwork can there be? It's one account, 6 years. I had other expenses too, Ryan. Cash payments to contractors, that kind of thing. I need to organize it. When end of week, I'd like them tomorrow. A pause. I'll see what I can do. The warmth in Travis's voice had dimmed slightly over the last 48 hours. It was still there, but it required more effort. How are Mom and Dad? They're well. Mom slept in her own bed last night. First time in 4 months. Silence. Good, Travis said. That's good. Ryan hung up. He did not have faith the records were coming. He had already obtained everything he needed without them. Marcus had reviewed the scanned documents overnight and sent a 9-paragraph summary at 6 that morning. The power of attorney, he wrote, showed significant problems. The notarization was performed by a notary employed by the same hospital standard practice for most POA signings, but in conjunction with the evidence that Earl had been post-surgical and on cardiac medication, it built a credible case for diminished capacity and undue influence. Marcus had researched Kentucky case law on the matter. There were precedents. "I want to come down," Marcus had written at the end of the email. "I think this is bigger than a phone consultation. Can you book me somewhere in town?" Ryan had replied, "There's a Holiday Inn in Harlan. Come whenever you can." Marcus was arriving Saturday, 2 days away. Ryan spent Thursday morning with his parents. He drove Diane to the grocery store himself, held her arm in the parking lot, walked slowly through the produce aisle while she deliberated over tomatoes with the seriousness of someone for whom this decision still mattered. He paid for everything. He loaded the car. He put the groceries away in the kitchen while she sat at the table and told him about a recipe she used to make for company, a potato casserole she hadn't made in years, because she couldn't remember quite how it went. He wrote the recipe down as she described it, asking clarifying questions because the act of writing it down as she spoke made her remember things she would have lost a moment later. Butter first. Red potatoes. Half and half, not milk. Earl spent the morning in the barn, which Ryan now understood was where he went when he needed to think or not think, or simply stand among familiar things. Ryan checked on him at noon, and they ate sandwiches at the barn door looking out at the property. "Dad," Ryan said between bites, "I need to ask about the land. The 68 acres. Earl chewed slowly. "What about it? Has Travis ever talked about selling it or developing it?" Earl was quiet for a long moment. He mentioned a few times there were buyers interested, said the county was extending the Route 119 spur, and that would make the east acreage more valuable. A pause. "I told him I wasn't interested in selling." "Your grandfather cleared that land. When was this?" "Past 2 years. Several times." Earl looked at the tree line. "He said it would give me and your mother security. Said the proceeds could pay for a nice place, assisted living somewhere comfortable." There it was. The land valuation Travis had commissioned. The nursing home as a destination. It wasn't disorganized neglect. It was a plan with a sequence to it. Spend the cash from Ryan's deposits, let the property decline, push the parents toward institutionalization, invoke the POA to sell the land. Travis had been working toward the land. Did he have any paperwork about selling? He brought something once. Said it was just an assessment. Wanted me to sign to allow a formal appraisal. Earl set down his sandwich. "I wouldn't sign it." He got upset. Ryan looked at him. He got upset. Not in a loud way. Travis doesn't do things loudly. Earl picked up his sandwich again. He just got quiet. And then he said he was only trying to help us. And then he left. That evening, Ryan found Earl in the living room with a shoebox on his lap. He was sitting in the armchair, not moving, just holding the box with both hands. It was a worn shoebox, the kind of box that had lived in a closet for a decade, and he was holding it the way you hold something you don't know what to do with. Ryan sat across from him. "What's that, Dad?" Earl looked up. His eyes were different than they'd been in the past few days, not pained exactly, but resolved. Like he'd been arguing with himself, and had finally come out on the other side of the argument. "I found this in the barn about 2 weeks ago," Earl said. "Behind the old feed bags, back where we used to keep the seed corn. Somebody put it there. He paused. I didn't know what to do with it. I thought about calling Travis, and then I thought I didn't know what to think. He held it out to Ryan. Ryan took it. It was heavier than he expected. He opened the lid. Letters. A stack of them bound loosely with a rubber band that had dried out and cracked. He lifted them out. Each one was addressed to Earl and Diane Calloway in Ryan's handwriting, the address on Harlan Road. His parents' house, the address he'd written hundreds of times, and each one had been opened. The envelope flap had been lifted and then resealed with clear tape, the kind of thin tape that wasn't quite invisible if you knew what you were looking at. He counted them. 41 envelopes. He opened the top one, dated 43 months ago. His own handwriting. Dad, Mom, hope this finds you well. The rain finally stopped here. I know you've been worried about the water heater I've added extra this month to cover whatever the replacement costs. Travis says it's been running cold. Let me know how it goes. He opened another from 2 years ago. A birthday card for his mother. A real card picked out in a drugstore in the Mission District. Inside, in his handwriting, Happy birthday, Mom. I'll call this weekend. I love you. She had never received it. He sat there with 41 letters in his lap and looked at his father across the room. Earl said, She thought you forgot her birthday. Travis told her you were very busy. She cried. He said it without accusation, just recitation, the way you report a fact you can't change. I told her that wasn't like you. She said people change when they get successful. Ryan could not speak for a moment. He set the letters down in a careful stack on the coffee table. He breathed. Then he picked up his phone and texted Marcus a single line. Call me as soon as you land. It's worse than I thought. Ryan stayed up until 2 in the morning photographing every letter. He spread them across the kitchen table in chronological order. 41 envelopes, the earliest from 5.5 years ago, the most recent from 8 months back. The rubber band that held them had cracked, and he used a paperclip from the kitchen junk drawer instead. He photographed each envelope front and back, then each letter inside, then each envelope seal with the tape visible. The evidence of the tape was important. An opened and resealed letter was the difference between Travis holding mail and Travis deliberately intercepting it. The tape said someone had read these, decided to keep them, and then closed them back up, perhaps planning to use them or perhaps just unwilling to destroy them. Ryan didn't know which. It didn't matter for the purpose of documentation. Some of the letters had checks inside, personal checks Ryan had written in the early years before he'd set up the wire transfer made out to Earl and Diane Calloway. He found 6 of them. 2 had been deposited. The endorsement was on the back in Travis's handwriting, not his parents'. 4 had never been deposited at all. He added the total. $3,200 in checks that had been either stolen or voided. Small in the context of $288,000, but clear and specific and fully documented on paper. At midnight, he called Sandra. She answered after 3 rings, no grogginess, she'd apparently been awake. I need to ask you something, Ryan said. When you called the number on my parents' kitchen wall and a man answered, what did he say exactly? Sandra was quiet a moment, remembering. He said you were unavailable and to leave a message. He said you were very busy and that Earl and Diane didn't want to worry you. Did he give a name? No. I assumed it was an assistant or something. Ryan looked at the letters spread across the kitchen table. I need you to check something tomorrow morning if you can. Is there a number written by the kitchen phone at my parents' house on the wall or on a pad? I've seen it. It's on a small whiteboard. Can you look at it tomorrow and read me the number first thing? Sandra said. She called at 8:15 the next morning. The number on the whiteboard was a 606 area code, Eastern Kentucky, and it was not Ryan's cell phone or his San Francisco landline. Ryan ran it through reverse lookup. The number was registered to Travis Calloway. It was Travis's personal cell number. His parents had been calling Travis, believing they were calling Ryan. For how long, Ryan couldn't say, but the whiteboard was not something that appeared overnight, and the number was written in Diane's handwriting, which meant she had written it down herself, probably at Travis's instruction. Ryan called Sandra back and asked her one more thing. Did she know whether the landline had ever acted strangely? Calls not going through, incoming calls going to voicemail unexpectedly, Sandra said. About 5 years ago, the phone company sent a notice. Something about the account changing plans. Your mother mentioned it. She said Travis had sorted it out, updated the plan to something cheaper. A pause. There were a few times after that when I called the house and got a voicemail that didn't sound like Earl or Diane's message. Sounded like a generic telecom voicemail. Ryan thanked her and put the phone down. He sat at the table with the morning coffee going cold in front of him. It was clear enough. Travis had changed the landline plan, likely adding a call, forwarding, redirect routing incoming calls through his own line before they reached the house. When Ryan called the landline to check in over the years, he had sometimes spoken directly to Travis, who said his parents were resting or in the yard. The times Ryan reached his parents directly, Travis was probably not filtering that call. But any call that arrived from someone else, a neighbor, a concern, a social worker, would have gone through Travis first. Ryan was methodical about it. He made a list: mail interception 41 letters confirmed, tape on seals, some checks diverted, phone redirect call forwarding plan change documented, Travis's number on the whiteboard. Financial diversion $2.8 over 6 years documented in bank records. POA obtained under duress, cardiac procedure, hospital setting, no independent counsel. Neglect property decline, sparse pantry, Diane in chicken coop for 4 months. Medical records suppressed, Travis mentioned neurologist, but no records in household. Chicken coop conversion $2,000 to unlicensed handyman billed as maintenance. Land motive property assessment commissioned by Travis, development value $1.2 million. When Marcus arrived Saturday afternoon, Ryan spread it across the kitchen table the same way he'd spread the letters, in order, everything labeled and photographed and summarized. Marcus sat down across from him and read through it without interruption for 35 minutes. Then Marcus looked up and said, "You've been busy. I had to understand it before you got here." Marcus nodded. He picked up the POA document and read it again, more slowly this time, making penciled notes in the margin. Then he read the summary Ryan had written about Earl's hospital signing. Then he reviewed the bank records timeline. "The POA challenge is solid," Marcus said. "Undue influence claim is supported by the circumstances. Cardiac procedure, post-surgical medication. No independent legal review of document scope, and agent who misrepresented the document's reach." He set it down. "I want to talk to Earl myself. With your permission, he'll talk to you. And Diane, I need a baseline on her cognition. Not to diminish her, just to understand where she's at. She has good days and harder days. Yesterday was good." Marcus nodded. "The financial abuse statute in Kentucky, it includes exploitation of an adult who is 18 or older by a person in a position of trust. Travis was clearly in a position of trust. The diversion of funds through the joint account is documented." He paused. "Ryan, this is both civil and criminal territory. You understand that I do. A civil judgment gets you the money or an ordered repayment. A criminal referral goes to the DA and becomes their call." Marcus looked at him steadily. "Do you want to pursue both?" Ryan thought about his mother in the chicken coop with his photograph on a shelf. He thought about 41 letters with tape on the seals. He thought about Diane's handwriting on the whiteboard, a phone number she'd been told was her son's. "Both," he said. Marcus opened his briefcase and took out a legal pad. Then let's start building this correctly. They worked for 3 hours at the kitchen table. Earl came in at noon, and Marcus talked to him for 45 minutes in the living room, while Ryan made sandwiches. Diane was having a good day. She came in, chatted with Marcus, briefly told him he looked like a man who needed a good meal, and went back to her garden. Marcus came back to the kitchen while Ryan was washing dishes. His account is consistent, Marcus said quietly. Earl is clear on the signing circumstances. He's clear on what Travis told him versus what the document actually says. He's credible. A pause. He's also ashamed, Ryan. He's been ashamed for 2 years, and he doesn't know what to do with it. He gave me the shoebox, Ryan said. He did. Marcus sat down. That's the act of a man who has been waiting for permission to tell the truth. That evening, Ryan's phone rang from a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Meadowview Care Center, Harlan County. The administrator was professional, careful, and clearly reading from a script. They had received placement paperwork from Travis Calloway for Earl and Diane Calloway. The paperwork included a copy of the power of attorney. The administrator was calling to confirm the intake date. Ryan said, "Do not confirm any intake date. That placement is being contested. Our attorney will be in contact with you by 9 a.m. Monday." He ended the call. He stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment, looking at his parents in the living room, Earl with his newspaper, Diane with her book, and he felt the timeline compress. Travis was moving. Whatever calculation he'd been running had reached its endpoint, and he was acting before Ryan could complete his case. He went to find Marcus. Marcus was in the spare bedroom, turning it into a workspace, legal pads across the dresser, laptop, open, the POA document spread flat with sticky tabs at 2 passages. Ryan stood in the doorway and told him about the Meadowview call. Marcus listened without expression. When Ryan finished, Marcus said, "What time is it?" 8:47. Okay. Marcus closed his laptop. Then we work tonight. We file in the morning. They sat at the kitchen table until past midnight. Marcus drafted an emergency motion for a protective order citing the evidence of financial abuse, the contested power of attorney, the circumstances of Earl's signing the nursing home placement as an act of coercive control, and the immediate and irreparable harm that would result if Earl and Diane were removed from their home. He typed on his laptop, while Ryan provided dates, account numbers, and the names of relevant parties. Ryan printed pages on the small printer he'd bought at Walmart the day before and stacked them in order. At one point, Marcus set down his pen and said, "He's panicking." Ryan looked up. "Travis, the nursing home move. It's premature. He has the POA, but a contested POA with this much documented background is a liability, not an asset. Any competent judge will want to know why the agent is pursuing institutionalization while a family dispute is active." Marcus tapped his pen on the pad. "He moved too fast because you moved fast. He needed to institutionalize them before you built the case. Now you've built the case and he's still moving, but he's moving into the wind." Ryan thought about the calculation Travis must have been running since the moment Ryan appeared in the driveway. 6 years of careful construction, the communication blackout, the financial diversion, the steady decline of the property, and then Ryan had shown up in a rental car, and in 72 hours had begun dismantling it all. Travis had to act. "He gave me a 48-hour window when he called last night," Ryan said. "I know. We're using those hours to file." Marcus finished the motion at 12:40 and read it back to himself, while Ryan looked at the ceiling. Then Marcus made 2 corrections, printed it, signed it, and put it in his briefcase. "Harlan County Circuit opens at 9, Marcus said. "I'll be there." Ryan showed him to the spare room and went to bed, though not to sleep. He lay on the couch in the living room. He had been sleeping there all week, unwilling to take his parents' bedroom and listened to the house. At 2 a.m., he heard Diane's door open and her soft footsteps in the hall, then the bathroom, then back. Old house sounds. He had not heard them in 6 years. He listened to them now. In the morning, he drove Marcus to the courthouse and waited in the parking lot with coffee from the gas station. At 9:43, Marcus came back out with a receipt from the clerk's office. Emergency motion filed. The judge's clerk had indicated a hearing could be scheduled within 48 hours given the circumstances. They drove back to the farm. Travis's truck was in the driveway. Travis was standing at the front door talking to Earl. There was a second man Ryan didn't recognize somewhere in his 50s briefcase, the careful posture of someone in a professional context, outside his usual office. Travis's attorney. Ryan parked. He and Marcus got out. Travis turned at the sound of the car doors. For a moment, no one moved. The morning was already warm, locusts going in the oaks. Travis said, addressing Ryan, "I came to talk." "You can talk to Marcus," Ryan said. "Marcus Webb, my attorney." Travis's attorney introduced himself, Hammond Price, Harlan County, a real estate law firm. Ryan noted the specialization real estate, not elder law, which confirmed what the land assessment had already suggested about Travis's priorities. The two attorneys stepped slightly apart. Marcus was taller and moved with the calm of someone who had been to court more recently and more often than Hammond Price. Travis looked at Ryan. "You filed on me. We filed a motion for a protective order. You want to do this in front of Dad?" Earl was standing in the doorway. He had not moved. His expression was still and clear, the expression of a man who had decided to stand in a doorway and not back up. Ryan said Dad stays if he wants to stay. He's an adult, and this concerns him and Mom. Travis looked at Earl. Something passed between the brothers and their father, 6 years of absence on one side, 6 years of presence on the other, and neither version having turned out to mean what it was supposed to mean. Travis turned back to Ryan. "I was doing what needed to be done." "I know what you were doing," Ryan said. He said it quietly and without heat. "I've documented it." Hammond Price said something to Marcus about needing to review the motion before responding. Marcus agreed, gave him a copy, and suggested they reconvene the conversation through formal channels. Hammond Price agreed. It was all very professional. Travis watched his attorney and Ryan's attorney exchange cards. His jaw was set. His easy manner was gone now, not gone into anger, gone into stillness. He said to Ryan directly, "You've been gone 6 years. I know. You don't know what it's been like here." Ryan looked at him. "You're right. I don't. Because you made sure I didn't." Travis held his gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once, a single, precise nod, like acknowledging the score of a game. He turned and walked back to his truck. Hammond Price followed. Ryan watched them go down the lane. Earl was still in the doorway. "You all right, Dad?" Ryan said. Earl looked at the driveway where the truck had been. "He looked like his mother," Earl said finally. "When he was a baby. All of us thought he was going to be just fine." He went back inside. Marcus stood beside Ryan. "Price will review the motion this afternoon. He'll tell Travis the POA is challenged, the financial records are documented, and that contesting this in court is a losing position given the evidence. And if Travis doesn't back down, then we have a hearing, and we win it." Marcus picked up his briefcase. "I want to get Diane's neurologist records today. You mentioned Travis said she'd seen someone in Hazard. No records at the house." "I know. I want to contact the practice directly. As her son, you have standing to request them. We'll need a HIPAA authorization from Diane on her good days." Marcus paused. "I'm also going to check with the county social services office. There may be reports they've been sitting on. Ryan nodded. He went inside to explain to Diane as simply and calmly as he could that there were some legal things being sorted and that she didn't need to worry. But could she sign a couple of papers that would let her doctor talk to him? Diane said of course, and asked if he wanted coffee, and went to find her reading glasses. Ryan's phone buzzed at 11 that night. Travis. Last chance, Ryan. Sign the quit claim on your share of the land, and I walk away. Tear up the motion, and we're done. 24 hours. Ryan set the phone on the kitchen table. He looked at it. He thought about the quit claim, his share of the 68 acres, his grandfather's land, the land Earl wouldn't sell to Travis because he knew what it meant. Ryan's share wasn't worth the fight. In dollar terms, he could write a check for his share's market value and not notice it in his account. But signing it under threat was a different thing entirely. Signing it would mean Travis walked away from $288,000 in theft from the chicken coop, from the intercepted letters, from 4 months of his mother sleeping 60 yards from her own bedroom. Ryan picked up the phone. He didn't respond to Travis. He put it face down. He opened his laptop and pulled up the banking app. He transferred 1 month's expenses, groceries, utilities, medical copays, all of it directly into a new account in his and Earl's names. He set up a recurring transfer. Then he called Marcus and left a voicemail. Travis sent another message tonight. I'm not responding. We go to the hearing. He sat at the kitchen table until the percolator was empty and the house was quiet. The 24-hour deadline passed without Ryan responding. At 9 the next morning, Travis called. Ryan answered on the second ring. Travis, I'm going to file the nursing home transfer this afternoon. The protective order motion is already filed, Ryan said. The hearing is set. Hammond Price knows this. The POA is notarized and valid. A motion doesn't void it. A hearing might. Our attorney is confident. A silence. Then Travis shifted approach. His voice went quieter, more personal. Ryan, listen to me. I know you think you understand this situation, but you've been away for 6 years. Mom's condition is worse than they're telling you. She needs supervised care. Dad can't manage her alone. I've been watching this deteriorate for 2 years, Ryan said. Why didn't you tell me I tried? You changed the number on the kitchen wall to yours. You intercepted 41 letters. You set up call forwarding on the landline. Ryan kept his voice level. If you were worried about Mom, there were 100 ways to reach me. You chose none of them. The line was quiet for longer this time. Travis said I had costs. The property costs money to maintain. The account wasn't enough. The account had $4,000 a month for 6 years. I have records of every withdrawal. Some of those were my expenses. For time and labor. $273,000 in personal expenses over 6 years. Silence. Back off the motion, Travis said. Sign the quit claim on your land share. I'll handle the placement properly, a good facility, not state-funded. I have a relationship with Meadowview. Mom and Dad will have their own room. They'll be taken care of. Ryan looked out the kitchen window at the backyard. The morning light was flat and gray clouds moving in from the west. No, he said. You're going to cost yourself, I'm going to cost myself nothing. I've built the case, Travis. If you file the transfer today, we'll have an emergency hearing before end of week, and every document I have goes before a judge. He paused. You can talk to Hammond Price about what that looks like. The call ended. Ryan sat down. His hands were steady, which surprised him slightly. He had expected the confrontation to feel larger, somehow bigger in the chest, louder. Instead, it felt like moving a heavy piece of furniture into the right position. Final and quietly satisfying. He called Marcus and relayed the conversation. Marcus. He'll file. He has to. He can't back down without triggering the formal accounting process. Filing gives him grounds to claim he was acting properly under the POA until the court rules otherwise. A pause. Expect him to move today. What do we do? We have the hearing. I've spoken with Judge Harlan's clerk, Thomas Harlan, been on the circuit bench for 19 years, knows elder law well. The emergency protective order hearing is scheduled for 10 a.m. day after tomorrow. That's 48 hours. Marcus's voice was steady. Keep your parents in the house. If Travis shows up with anyone from Meadowview, be polite, document everything, and do not block physical access to the property in any way that could be used against us. What if they try to physically remove them? The protective order motion creates a legal question mark. Anyone representing Meadowview who knows their business will not remove an elderly resident under disputed circumstances. The liability is too high. A beat. Stay calm. Stay polite. Keep documenting. Ryan spent the day close to the house. He drove Sandra over for lunch. He wanted his parents to have familiar faces around. Sandra brought peach cobbler. Diane was delighted and asked 3 times over the course of the meal whether Sandra had used fresh peaches or canned, and each time accepted the answer, fresh peaches, with equal pleasure. Earl ate well and didn't talk much, which Ryan had come to understand as his version of stability. Earl talked when things needed to be said and was quiet when he was managing. In the mid-afternoon, Travis arrived with a man Ryan assumed was from Meadowview. The man was in khakis and a polo shirt, with a facility logo on the pocket, and he carried a clipboard. Travis was wearing the pressed flannel and new boots again. Ryan met them at the edge of the porch. He did not block the steps. Travis said, "We're here to conduct a preliminary assessment. There is an active protective order motion in Harlan County Circuit Court," Ryan said. He had the case number memorized. He said it aloud slowly. "I'd recommend the assessment wait until that motion is resolved." The man from Meadowview looked at Travis. Travis said, "The POA is in effect. This is within my authority. That's for the court to determine," Ryan said. He looked at the man from Meadowview. "You're welcome to consult with your facility's legal counsel before proceeding. I'll give you Marcus Webb's information." He held out a business card. He'd printed them from the office supply corner at the gas station. "He's available." The Meadowview representative took the card. He looked at it for a moment and then looked at Travis. Travis said, "Jerry." The man from Meadowview said, "We should probably make a call, Travis." He held the business card. "Before we proceed." They went back to Travis's truck. Ryan watched them from the porch. After about 12 minutes, the Meadowview representative got out of the truck and walked back toward Ryan. "We're going to hold on the assessment," the man said, "until the court matter is resolved." "I appreciate that," Ryan said. Travis sat in the truck for another moment. Then he reversed down the lane and left. Ryan went inside. He sat down at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands for about 30 seconds. Not from despair, but from the sheer, sustained effort of keeping it together. Then he poured himself a glass of water and went to check on his parents. Diane was in the garden, moving slowly along the tomato plants, touching each one lightly as she passed. Earl was watching her from the kitchen window. Ryan stood beside his father. The afternoon was warm, clearing slightly. Diane bent to examine a plant, and then straightened and looked back at the house and saw them both in the window. She waved. They both waved back. That night, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with the shoebox open in front of him. He hadn't planned to open it again. He had everything documented, But he picked up a letter from about 3 years ago, one he'd already photographed, and read it through properly this time. It was 2 pages. He had written about the work he was doing, a new product launch, a camping trip he'd taken in Marin that reminded him of the woods behind the back 40. He had written about missing the smell of the place, specifically the combination of pine and creek mud that existed on the property in a way he hadn't smelled anywhere else. He had asked about the cedar tree by the barn, whether it was still doing well. He had said he was proud of them and that he thought about them every day. He had not been lying. He had thought about them. From a distance, the distance Travis had manufactured and Ryan had accepted without fully examining. He put the letter back in the envelope. He put the envelope in the box. He put the lid on his box. He picked up his phone and wrote a short text to his business partner in San Francisco. "I'm going to be here longer than planned. Start the quarterly review without me. I'll call when I can." His partner replied, almost immediately. "Everything okay?" Ryan looked at the kitchen with its repaired pantry, the grocery bags he'd restocked 2 days ago, the percolator on the counter, the legal pad on the table. "It will be," he typed back. "Go ahead without me." He put the phone down and went to sleep. The Harlan County Circuit Courthouse had the quality of all old county courthouses, high ceilings that amplified sound, wooden benches, worn smooth by decades of waiting, a clock on the wall that seemed to run slightly slow. Judge Thomas Harlan was 61, silver-haired, and moved with the deliberateness of a man who had heard a great deal and been surprised by very little. Ryan sat at the petitioner's table beside Marcus. Earl sat in the first row of the gallery in the sports coat he'd worn to his sister's funeral in 2019. He had asked to be present, and Ryan had said yes without hesitation. Travis sat across the aisle with Hammond Price. He was in a button-down shirt, and his jaw was set in the expression Ryan had come to understand was his version of patience. Sandra Lee sat in the gallery on Ryan's side, third row, hands folded. Judge Harlan opened at 10:08. He acknowledged the motion and confirmed the parties. Then he said, "This court has reviewed the emergency motion for protective order, the petitioner's evidentiary submissions, and the respondent's reply filed yesterday. I'm going to hear from both sides, and I'm going to ask some direct questions. Mr. Webb, you may proceed." Marcus stood. He did not approach the bench dramatically. He stood at the table and spoke in a clear, measured voice, the way Ryan imagined Marcus had spoken in courtrooms for 20 years. He began with the bank records. 6 years, $4,000 a month documented withdrawals in Travis Calloway's name. The total, $288,000 deposited by the petitioner's son. The amount demonstrably spent on the parents' household, under $15,000. The remainder diverted. He placed the printed bank statements in evidence. The judge reviewed the summary page, then Marcus moved to the power of attorney. He read the signing date. He read Earl's medical records from the day before the cardiac procedure, the medication administered. He described the circumstances: hospital room, post-surgical, no independent counsel, present agent, provided notary agent, misrepresented scope of document to the signing party. He placed the POA document in evidence. He placed Earl's medical records in evidence. Then the letters. Marcus described the shoebox, 41 letters intercepted over 6 years, opened, resealed with tape never delivered to the intended recipients. He placed photographs of the envelopes in evidence, the tape visible in the high-resolution prints. He placed the phone company's account change documentation in evidence, the forwarding redirect installed 5 years ago. He placed Buddy Hale's statement in evidence, the roofing contractor who gave an estimate and was dismissed without explanation. He placed the H. Danner Services receipt in evidence, $2,000 to an unlicensed handyman for the chicken coop conversion. He placed Diane's neurologist records in evidence obtained with Diane's consent, showing an early-stage cognitive assessment 8 months ago, with follow-up recommended. Travis had not informed Ryan of the diagnosis, the assessment, or the recommended follow-up. Diane had not received the follow-up care. He placed Sandra Lee's sworn declaration in evidence 14 months of twice-weekly visits, the handwritten note from Diane, the calls to the number on the kitchen wall. Finally, Marcus placed the property assessment in evidence commissioned by Travis Calloway, dated 18 months ago, showing the development value of the 68 acres at $1.2 million. The respondent, Marcus said, obtained broad power of attorney over the petitioner's father under circumstances of undue influence and inadequate disclosure. He exercised that power of attorney to divert over $250,000 of funds entrusted to him to allow the family property to deteriorate, to suppress communication between the petitioner's son and his parents for multiple years, and to arrange minimal-cost accommodation in an outbuilding for the petitioner's mother, while her own bedroom stood empty and available. He is now seeking, under the same contested authority, to transfer both elderly parents to a care facility against their stated wishes and without court authorization, in circumstances that this evidence strongly suggests are motivated by the development value of the family land. Marcus sat down. Hammond Price had 4 arguments. He marshaled them with skill. The POA was notarized and legally executed under Kentucky statute. Travis had been the present caregiver while Ryan was absent for 6 years. The bank withdrawals had covered legitimate caregiver expenses that Price described as reasonable for hands-on family management, and the nursing home placement was a genuine care decision made in the parents' interest. The judge listened to all of it. Then he looked at Earl. "Mr. Calloway," the judge said, "did you understand the scope of the document you signed? 26 months ago, Earl stood. He had his hands at his sides. He said, 'My son Travis told me it was for financial decisions, in case I was incapacitated. He said it was standard.'" A pause. "He did not tell me it covered my wife's medical care or decisions about the property. Were you advised by an independent attorney before signing?" "No, sir. Just the notary Travis brought." "Were you aware that the notary represented the hospital and not your interests?" "No, sir." The judge made a note. He asked a few more questions of Marcus, of Hammond Price, of Earl once more about the letters. Earl said he had found them in this barn, and that in 6 years he had not received a single letter Ryan had written. When asked about the number on the kitchen whiteboard, he said Travis had written it there and said it was Ryan's new California number. The judge reviewed his notes for about 2 minutes. Then he said, "The power of attorney document in question fails to satisfy the requirements for an instrument affecting real property under Kentucky Revised Statutes 450, and does not conform to the standard of informed consent for an adult who may have had diminished decision-making capacity at the time of signing. The court finds sufficient evidence of undue influence and inadequate disclosure to void this power of attorney, effective immediately." He looked at Travis. "Mr. Calloway, the power of attorney is void. Any action taken in the last 24 hours under that authority, including contact with Meadowview Care Center, is without legal standing." Travis was still. "A guardian ad litem will be appointed for Mrs. Diane Calloway to address her healthcare decisions in consultation with her family and medical providers." The judge looked at Marcus. "With regard to the financial misappropriation documented in the petitioner's submission, the respondent is ordered to provide a complete accounting of all withdrawals made from the joint account over the period in question within 30 days. Based on the preliminary evidence, this court enters a civil judgment in favor of the petitioner and the estate of Earl and Diane Calloway for a sum not less than $273,000, subject to final accounting. A payment schedule will be established." He paused. Additionally, based on the totality of the evidence presented today, this matter will be referred to the Harlan County District Attorney's Office for review under Kentucky's Adult Financial Exploitation Statute, KRS 2 ASCQ. He looked around the courtroom. The protective order is granted. Earl and Diane Calloway will remain in their home. Any transfer to a care facility requires court authorization and the agreement of the newly appointed guardian ad litem. He closed the folder in front of him. This court is adjourned. Hammond Price leaned close to Travis and spoke quietly. Travis sat very still. His jaw was working. Ryan looked at Earl beside him. Earl had his hands folded on his knees. His eyes were clear. Marcus gathered the documents in careful order. Sandra, in the third row, exhaled slowly. Outside on the courthouse steps, Marcus shook Ryan's hand. Ryan stood in the August sunlight and felt the weight of the past 10 days as something that was not quite gone but was no longer falling on him alone. It was in the record now. It was a matter of court. Earl came out behind them. He stood on the top step and looked at the street, the small downtown of Harlan, the hardware store, the diner, the old theater with the marquee missing half its letters. He had grown up here. His parents had grown up here. His grandfather had cleared 68 acres north of town. Ryan stood beside him. Earl said, "I suppose we should go home." "Yeah," Ryan said. "Let's go home." 6 weeks later, the roof was done. Ryan had hired a crew from Hazard, 4 men, 3 days the guest room, and a section of the main roof that had been slow leaking for longer than Travis's story about it. He had stood in the yard and watched them work, which was something his father also did, and they understood each other in that way without discussing it. Travis had left Harlan County 2 weeks after the hearing. He had not said goodbye to his parents. He had called Ryan once from a number Ryan didn't recognize, and Ryan had answered, and Travis had said, "I'm not going to fight the accounting process." Ryan had said, "I know." That was the whole conversation. The civil judgment was being processed through the court-supervised repayment structure. The DA had opened a review file. Whether it became a prosecution was not Ryan's to control. Earl had not spoken Travis's name since the courthouse steps. Ryan did not push. The new roof drew a straight line against the sky, clean, properly flashed warranty documentation in a folder on the kitchen counter. The porch board had been replaced. The fence line had been reset. The barn roof was the next project. Ryan had an estimate from a contractor whose work Sandra had vouched for. The kitchen was full. Ryan had been cooking, which turned out to be something he was better at than he'd expected. Or perhaps the bar had been low enough that anything edible registered as an accomplishment. He made the potato casserole from Diane's description 3 times before it came out right. The third time, Diane had taken 1 bite and said, "That's it, exactly." She had looked surprised that the recipe had survived. The guardian ad litem, a social worker named Patrice from the county office, efficient and kind, had established a care schedule for Diane. A geriatric nurse came twice a week. The neurologist in Hazard had seen Diane twice. Her condition was early-stage manageable with structure and routine and familiar surroundings. The neurologist had been clear the single best intervention for someone at Diane's stage was stability. A familiar home. Familiar people. Ryan had bought a laptop stand for the kitchen table. He worked mornings. He took calls in the afternoon when the house was quieter. His business partner in San Francisco had started calling him the Kentucky office, which Ryan hadn't corrected. One Thursday afternoon, Diane asked him to walk with her to the garden. The tomatoes were past their peak, but there were still good ones, and she had planted marigolds along the edge of the bed in a line that she said kept the aphids off. Ryan walked beside her along the row, hands in his pockets. She moved slowly but steadily, stopping to examine each plant, with the focused attention of someone who cared about what she was looking at. She stopped at the end of the row and turned to look back at the house. The new paint on the south face hadn't happened yet. That was a fall project, but the repaired siding and the solid roof gave it a different quality than when Ryan had arrived. It looked inhabited again. Cared for. "It looks like it used to," Diane said. "Almost. We'll get it there." She was quiet for a moment, looking at the property the way Earl sometimes did, as though she were taking inventory of the things that were still there. Then she said, "You know what I kept thinking about out in the coop?" Ryan looked at her. "I kept thinking when Ryan gets here we'll fix all this." She said it without drama or accusation, just recollection. "I knew you would come eventually. I just had to wait." She looked up at him. "I wasn't scared, really. I had your picture." Ryan said nothing. He put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him slightly, the way she had when he was small, and she was tall, and the world had a different arrangement. That evening, Sandra came for dinner. Earl had bought corn at the farm stand down the county road, and he grilled it in the shuck, which he had always done, and which Ryan had forgotten was something specific to this place, the way the corn tasted cooked that way, the faint char on the edges. They ate at the picnic table Earl had built in 1994, and which had survived every storm since. Sandra brought iced tea and a cobbler. They stayed outside until the light faded and the fireflies started up, after Sandra left. Earl and Diane went inside. Ryan sat on the porch for a while in the rocker that had been his father's for 20 years. The property was quiet. The barn roof caught a little of the last light. The chicken coop was a dark shape at the back edge of the yard, the extension cord long since coiled and put away. Ryan had thought about pulling it down. It was a reasonable impulse, why keep the thing? But every time he considered it, something stopped him. Not sentimentality exactly. More like the value of not forgetting. The coop didn't need to be a wound or a monument. It just needed to be what it was, a bad decision someone had made now corrected. It could stand. He heard the screen door, and Diane came out with 2 mugs of coffee. She moved carefully on the porch boards, watching her step. She handed him 1 mug and settled into the other rocker and wrapped both hands around hers. They looked at the yard for a while. Diane said, "Your picture is on the mantel now. I saw that. That's where it belongs." Ryan looked at her. Her profile against the last bit of sky. The silver hair, the way she held the mug. 68 years old, and still herself, still completely herself, whatever the neurologist said about trajectories. He thought about the photograph in the chicken coop, the shelf nailed to the wall, the framed image of a son she believed in even when she couldn't reach him, even when the months went by and the letters didn't come back and the phone rang someone else's house. She had kept waiting. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He looked at it, his partner in San Francisco, a text about a product decision that needed his input. He read it. He thought about it for a moment. Then he typed, "Your call. I trust your judgment. I'll review in the morning." He put the phone back in his pocket. Diane looked at him. "You don't have to stay, you know." "I know. I mean it. You have your life out there." Ryan looked at the property, the barn, the fence line, the oaks, the chicken coop at the far edge, the 68 acres his grandfather had cleared now in the names of Earl and Ryan Calloway, the legal paperwork filed and finalized, and on record. "I know I don't have to," he said. "That's not why I'm staying." She reached over without looking at him and patted his hand once the way she used to when he was 8 and had gotten something right that she'd been trying to teach him. They sat there until the coffee was gone and the fireflies were everywhere and the night settled over the farm. The screen door creaked in a light breeze. Down the county road, something moved through the field, a deer probably, or just the wind in the corn. Quiet. The particular quiet of a place that is cared for. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear what you would have done. Because sometimes the most important choice isn't the most expensive one. It's the one that makes you stay.